Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today in Titletown Packers podcast. My name is Griff, and you can follow me on Instagram at alldaypackers, and I'm joined by my very good friend Bron, who you can follow on Instagram at lambo.leapers. And we are coming back to you with another podcast after the Packers got their fifth victory of the season, this time over the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field. It feels good, doesn't it, Bron, beating the Bears? Even in a season like this, still feels good beating the Bears. How are you?
It feels really good to get a win, Griff, and even though we are not a great team this year, the one consistency is that we are always beating the Chicago Bears, and for that I am forever thankful.
We swept them, officially. We swept them this season, just like always, right? Matt LaFleur moves to 8-0 over the Chicago Bears. I mean, that's incredible. Coming off of that 2018 season, our last year of Mike McCarthy before we had Matt LaFleur, it really looked like the Bears were going to be good for a while. And Bears fans especially were so obnoxious about their team, and the Packers were not trending upward. They were trending downward, actually, with the new coach and Rodgers, whatever. And now you fast forward 3 years, and Matt LaFleur has yet to lose to this team. So that's pretty awesome. And of course, Aaron Rodgers still owns this team. He gives the fans the salute walking off the field, saluting them. It's like you said it best, Ron. He's the villain of the Chicago sports town, right? He's Darth Vader. They love to hate him. He loves being hated by them. And it's awesome because we get to root for him.
Yeah, Griff, he really embraces that role, and I feel like it brings out the best in him and when he gets to be the villain of that story, of the Chicago Bears-Packers rivalry. And he has been the villain for so long, the antagonist, if you will. And he, like I said, he embraces that role, and he really thrives when the pressure's on. And with all the hatred thrown his way, he kind of overcomes it. And there was a lot that went into why the Packers won today, even though they didn't play really great at all times. They played really great when it mattered, and that's why they're coming out with the win, and Aaron Rodgers is still their owner, and it's a lot of fun to watch.
He is still their owner. This was an interesting game, Bron. I mean, I wouldn't say I was rooting for the Bears, but if this game felt unlike any other game this season, and it felt like unlike any other game since 2018. It felt like I was watching, a Week 18 game against the Detroit Lions from last year, where it doesn't really matter. And also, you know what? It's the Packers. They're kind of better off if they lose this game. So it was very interesting. I mean, of course, I love watching this team win. It still makes me happy watching them create big plays and watching these young players like Christian Watson continue to develop. But I don't know, man. I don't know what the takeaway is coming out of this game. Bron, you said before, I think you said a couple days ago, if we win this game, people are going to start doing math. And look at you, you're already on the ESPN playoff machine right after this game ended. So people are going to be breaking down.
I'm such a hypocrite.
Yeah. People are going to be breaking down the playoff scenarios. Who has to lose this game? We got to root against the Giants this week. The Packers, they have to win out, which includes a game against Minnesota and a game in Miami on Christmas. But no, they've got to win out. That's just step one. I mean, let's face it, folks. I hate to be this guy, but the Packers they still have a 5% chance on average. It varies based on which models you're looking at, but on average they have about a 5% chance of making the playoffs, which those percentages have kind of done all the math that you're doing on the playoff predictor, Bron. So it's unfortunate, and I get it that fans are going to be really excited about this team making the playoffs, but I don't know. I'm so
Griff, let me
sick
stop
and
you
tired
right
of this.
there. Let me stop you right there because math hasn't seen what I bring to the table, okay? Especially when we're talking about the Green Bay Packers. They don't know that Green Bay Packers miraculous math that I'm going to bring to the table. Like you said, I was talking about those people that are going to be doing that math. But I think I was probably the first person to whip that thing out and start doing the math.
You definitely were, and I knew it.
I'm pretty sure I was doing that in the fourth quarter.
If we won this game, I knew you would be the one who would start breaking out the you're going to post about the Packers' path to the playoffs. I know it's coming.
Can you blame me, Griff? I told you at some point, I don't know when it was, but I started thinking about what it would be like. And I understand the sentiment of like, if maybe none of this matters, this win, right? If we were to get eliminated in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever, maybe none of this matters. But I started thinking about getting a win like this in a week where it's week 13 and it's very late in the season. We haven't won since we won that game against Dallas, and that was so much fun. And I started to think about what it would be like for Aaron Rodgers, because we never know how many games he has left, how many years he has left. for him to get a win and get that win against the Bears, even though like the draft position would have been better if we were to lose to them, whatever, I just started to think about, what it was like to win and how great it would feel to watch Aaron walk off the field. And it's just that's what I want. I want to win. I want to win. And any little chance we have to get back in the playoffs, I want to keep trying and I want to go after it. That's the Packer way, is just win at all costs and do whatever you can. We've been in pretty bad positions over the years. This is definitely one of the worst and hardest in terms of trying to get into the playoffs from this spot. It would be miraculous, like I said, Griff, but any chance with Aaron Rodgers and this, the Green Bay Packers, I want that chance because you never know.
Yeah, I was conflicted coming into this game because, I wasn't rooting for the Bears, but I really wasn't rooting very hard for a Packers W because I'm interested in their long-term success beyond this season. But, being that we're playing the Chicago Bears in Chicago, yeah, I probably would have rather the Packers won this game. Start the tank next week.
Yeah, on the bye week. Let's start it then, Griff.
The week after that. Or we can lose the bye week. Another loss. Every loss matters. But also, another thing is, I don't know, this is going to annoy you, Bron, but I want to see Jordan Love play. I really do. I want to. I know. I want to see him play, man. I'm sick of watching Aaron Rodgers come out here and throw 18 for 31, 182, and a touchdown. That was his stat line today. 5.9 yards per attempt. I love Aaron, but he's not playing his best this season. He's got a broken thumb, broken ribs. He's throwing to Christian Watson and nobody else. Like, I do not get anything out of watching him play with this team. Come back next year, of course, when hopefully we're better offensively and things are going to be better. But this season, I don't need to see him play any longer. And also, I want to see Jordan Love play. I do. I want to see him play because he looked really good last week. And also, another thing, I want to lose games.
Well, if you put Jordan Love in, there's a sizable chance that happens. So
yeah, well, Aaron was not winning a whole lot for us either.
All right, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I knew. I got you there.
Got me there. But I will say, we don't know how many Aaron has left, Griff. I don't know if it's 1 year, 2 years. Maybe this is the last year, he always says, even though I highly, highly doubt that. But you just never know.
You were the Rodgers expert, right? So you watched his presser
Correct.
Today. Do you think it kind of sounded like he was thinking about moving on after this year?
No. It's a leverage thing. He does this every year for I don't want to call it attention, but we've been pointing out the leverage thing.
Man, I found this YouTube video. It's like 10 minutes long talking about him using his leverage.
Wow, they should. I think what was that on? Was that on?
Oh, that was our video. Right?
Oh, that was us. Oh. Right, and how well did that age?
Yeah, that aged perfectly, actually. If you haven't seen that, go back and watch that because it's from the 2021 draft when the report first comes out that Rodgers wants out, and it aged very well, I think. So it won an Emmy as well, that video.
It did, and that one's sitting on the shelf at home, isn't it, Griff?
It sure is.
But right, Griff, like I was saying, the leverage thing is something we've been pointing out for a while, and he wants the Packers to do things that he wants so that he'll come back. He wants to use the leverage to make sure that they're putting themselves in a position to try and win a championship. So when he looks at the offseason this year and he's deciding whether he wants to retire or he wants to play, when I know for a fact he wants to hit the age 40 mark and play, that would be, I think that's important to him. But I think when he utilizes this retirement talk, he wants to have Green Bay confirm that they are trying to win a championship by making moves to help the team as opposed to playing for the future in a year where he wants to be a part of a championship culture.
I think looking back, it's so mind-blowing that when you go back to March when Rodgers signs the extension and then a couple weeks later we trade Davante Adams and the report comes out that Rodgers knew about that trade happening. Rodgers knew Davante was not going to be here this year when he signed his extension. And you think, why did he do that? Why on earth would he have done that? Because he was apparently, so upset with how the Packers front office handles things, how they handle relationships, how they move on from players. And then he knows that they're going to trade the best receiver in football, also the only receiver he has to throw to. And he still agrees to come back to this team. There's just no way he's going to retire after this season. Like I think Gutekunst had to sell him on a multi-year project thing, because, I mean, looking at the Packers' moves this offseason, we've talked about it ad nauseum. They did pretty much nothing to help the team's chances this season, right? So I think that this offseason is really going to be when they go kind of all in. And Rodgers, I think he knows that, and I think he came into this season knowing that he would be here in 2023 at the very least. And he's going to be turning 40 that year, and I think he does want to turn 40 and still be playing well. And physically, there's been no drop-off. He's throwing the ball just as well. The arm strength, maybe a tad, is
Nope.
falling off, maybe just a tad.
Nope.
But I know you're saying nope. No, mobility-wise, he looks better out of the pocket than he did last year, I think, which is a weird thing. But physically, he's not. I mean, we just watched Matt Ryan play football, Bron. He's not Matt Ryan.
I think that's generous saying he played football. I'm not sure he really did much of that, but
I don't know what he was doing out there. But Rodgers is not at that Matt Ryan level. He's got it physically. He does. So he can certainly still play. I think he's having fun, even though they just won their 5th game of the year today. But yeah, I think he is going to be here next season.
Yeah, Griff, that's the hope, right? Because we're trying to win a Super Bowl, and any move to a scenario where that's not the case with him at quarterback is not a Super Bowl caliber football team. So when we look at it from the standpoint of, is he coming back, you have to hope that. And I think he will. You made a lot of great points about some of the reasons why he will. It just comes down to what he really wants and what he wants to see this front office do for this team. And you mentioned Brian Gutekunst. He's actually going to have a presser. Probably by the time that this is out, you'll have already heard it if you did listen, but he'll address some things, I guess. This was a pre-scheduled normal press conference ahead of the bye week, that's been scheduled for the entire season. This has been expected to occur, so he's just following through with that. And we'll see what he has to say, how he's going to answer for this season. That was a very disappointing one so far.
A lot of good questions, I hope.
A lot of questions.
There is a lot to be said by Goody here.
Yes, I hope that they address him with a lot of questions that need to be answered. Like, why would you go into this season with the plan at wide receiver that you had? And now the problem is they put themselves in a position where Brian wanted to get the first-round pick and the second-round pick in this draft to try to help them right away. Instead of getting 2 first-round picks, one of those would be this coming draft. Those are things you're going to have to ask him, and other things about why the defense has played so poorly and things like that. The construction of this team, cutting loose 2 of your best players, 2 all-pro players in Zadarius Smith and Devontae Adams, and expecting to become a better football team. Those are the questions that he needs to answer for, and hopefully he does.
Yeah, he's got a lot to answer for, definitely. And thinking big picture, this is a weird podcast, I have to say, because this is technically, it's our review show. The game just ended earlier today. We're recording the night after game day. But I mean, I don't know. It's week 13 and the Packers are 5-8. I don't really know how much this game matters. So I think we are okay to talk about some big picture stuff here. And when you're looking back on the season so far, it's interesting because the offense these last few weeks, honestly, the last month of the season, the offense hasn't been as bad. You remember how bad they were against the Jets, how bad they were against the Giants and against the Commanders, and that portion of the losing streak where we couldn't get a first down. It was just
when Aaron Rodgers was our leading rusher against Detroit.
Yes, oh my God, the Detroit game, we scored 9 points. The offense has been really bad this season, but the past month of the season, the Bills game we played well. That was before the Detroit game, but the Bills game, that was the first time this season that we really saw the group play well. On Sunday night against the Eagles last week, we scored 33 points. That's a season high. Against the Cowboys, that was the Christian Watson breakout game. So it's hard to really blame, because back when the offense was so bad, we were talking about, Gutekunst, how could you come into the season with this being the plan at wide receiver? But it's really, we haven't talked about Brian Gutekunst in a while on this show, because the offense really hasn't been the problem lately. It's now, we had a little discussion about this earlier on, so I kind of want to bring this back up. But now it's, looking back on the season, it's interesting because I would call it close to 50-50, the blame being on the offense and the defense, because there have been games where the defense keeps us in it for most of the game, and the offense, they just can't get out of their own way, can't score points, and the defensive effort doesn't matter. But now that we also have our fair share of games this season where the offense has played well. They've scored points. They score 33 against Philadelphia. But the defense is just way too awful for any of it to matter.
I really do wonder, Griff, how much of this falls on the fact that Davante Adams isn't here. Because if Davante was here with this group, when you have Christian Watson, Randall Cobb, Allen Lazard being like a 3 or 4, Romeo Doubs, these young guys bursting onto the scene with Davante still there, I mean, that's a receiving core right there. And I hate to even get to this point in thinking about it because it's just not the case. And it won't be unless something unbelievably drastic happens in the land of Las Vegas, but I just
what are you
have
thinking?
to think. I don't know if Carr goes. What is this? If Carr goes, like if they trade Derek Carr after this year, like that's what I think about.
Anything could happen, I guess, dude. We've both said since we traded Adams that Adams will finish his career in green and yellow.
I'm just saying if something were to happen where people have been talking about them trading Derek Carr, well, that's mainly the only reason that Davante went there. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's something I've always had in my mind because it couldn't have ended like that, and I hate that it did. But again, back to my point. Thinking about like how good of an offense we would be if we had Davante back in the fold, how much would that affect the way we play defense? Because the best defense is good offense, as you always say, Griff.
It's a great tagline.
And our defense is largely similar to last year in terms of personnel. Maybe that would have helped because we were really good on offense last year too, and that helps your defense look better. Complementary football makes every part of the offense, every part of the defense, every part of special teams, it all coincides to make everything better. So if we had Davante and the offense was playing like it was last year, maybe even better, the sky's the limit, I think, if Davante was here, then how much better would we be on defense? And with the way our special teams has played at times, how good could we be as a football team? So are we really just missing Davante Adams? Are we Davante Adams away from being the team that we were last year and in 2020 and maybe even better? I've started to feel like that's what it is, Griff.
I think that's definitely what it is. Davante Adams makes a huge impact, of course. And when you look at the roster from this year compared to this year's roster compared to last year's roster, there are a lot of moving parts, of course, but Davante is really the only big one. Because Zadarius Smith, he didn't even play all last year, right? So Davante is really the only big loss, and I do think it's funny when every week it seems whatever broadcast is doing our game, they always have the graphic of, oh, these are all the pieces that Green Bay lost this season. These are all the weapons that Aaron Rodgers lost. They lost Davante Adams. They lost their offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett. They lost their quarterback coach, Luke Getsy. And then they throw in Lucas Patrick, and they throw in Equanimous St. Brown. It's like,
where's like Bill Turner and Zadarius Smith in those conversations?
Bill Turner's not on these graphics. But Davante Adams, man, just imagine if we had Christian Watson with Davante Adams, and it's literally, I can't describe how this makes me feel. The frustration, the sadness that I feel when I think about this. But Christian Watson is literally just any young receiver, that we could have picked in the first round or the second round. That we've begged for when we had Davante. Every year we begged, please, we have to take someone because Davante, having one receiver is not enough. And then the year we move on from Davante, that's when we finally
take
draft a receiver.
6'4" Tyreek Hill.
Literally.
Imagine how great we would have been.
Oh my God, because now we have the weapon, which is what Christian Watson is. He's just the weapon. If we had the weapon with the route running god, the technician, the fundamentalist Davante Adams, if we had those two together, man, oh my God, dude, it would have been unstoppable. We were unstoppable without Watson. And if we throw him into the fold, which is just like a supercharged MVS,
you can't double Adams anymore.
No, you can't, man. God, it sucks. Well, now we've got Christian Watson, and now it's going to be funny this offseason, kind of ignoring Romeo for a second, just to think about this hypothetical. Going into this offseason, it's going to be funny if we're like, oh my God, all we have is Christian Watson. We have to address the receiver position. Because then we're just back where we started with Davante. But Christian Watson, has not slowed down whatsoever. He continues to score touchdowns. He had another receiving touchdown today and a rushing touchdown in there on an end around, 46 yards. God, he is just fantastic, isn't he? That game against Dallas, 3 touchdowns. Who could have seen this coming? Who would have thought that the next 3 games after that he would continue to be a touchdown machine and just be pretty much unstoppable?
He has done everything they could have imagined in his rookie season, especially after the injuries he dealt with and being. We talked about how he was just getting on the field for a couple plays at a time and he would get hurt. He would get lit up, and it's certainly not his fault. But we were concerned about, can he hold up? Because
I totally
he's getting
thought
popped.
His early injuries, I totally thought were indicative of who he was going to be as an NFL player. I thought he was just going to be injured constantly. But he's
so
held
far,
up well.
I mean, yes, he has. These past few weeks, certainly. He's getting hit a lot. He's got the ball in his hands quite a bit. And the main thing we always knew is that he's one of the fastest players in the NFL. And he's a different level athlete. You know how excited I was when we drafted Christian. I mean, he was my number 4 receiver in this draft, and in terms of where I thought we could get him, he was one of my number 1 or 2 guys in terms of the spot that we were in late in the first, and then we moved obviously up in the second round. But man, I love him as a player, and he's been so good. He's been compared to guys like Mike Evans, Deebo Samuel, but like he's just a whole different type of player because of his unique height and his unique speed at that height. He's 6'4", 6'5", but he runs as fast as Tyreek Hill, and that's not a joke. It's the reality of what he is, and it's just been so exciting to watch him. And now we just have to see. Right now he's great. Romeo showed flashes, but I think we need a veteran premier guy still. I just think that's what brings us back to that level of offense that we want to be. Whether that's a tight end or it's a wide receiver, I just think we need somebody else there because we talk about this all the time. We can't have teams keying in on the one guy. Now it's Christian Watson. It was Devontae Adams. They do different things, but teams are going to key in on those guys, and we're not having any. There was times even in this game against Chicago, whose secondary is very young. They have the really young, good corner Jalen Johnson, who is a stud, but other than that, it's a very young secondary. It's a bad secondary with guys like Eddie Jackson and others that they rely on really well out. Those guys were out. So this is a secondary very, very vulnerable, and guys were getting locked up a lot of the time, and including on big plays. So this is something that we need to address this offseason, especially when we're talking about Aaron Rodgers coming back and trying to be a team that wants to win a Super Bowl. One of the first things, one of the biggest needs on this team is to address the wide receiver position yet again. But it's still a reality, and it's still the case.
Yeah, because there were times today where, like, Aaron's running around for his life because the Chicago's pass rush is not good, and he's running around, and they're showing it after the play from the all-22 angle. There's just no one open. Everyone is just blanketed. So it's not like Christian Watson has solved all their problems, but he's certainly brought he's took it to a new level. Like, without Watson, they don't reach these heights as a passing offense. It looks a lot more like how it did against Washington and against the Jets, you know. So he's been that player. He has turned into the weapon where he is creating big plays, unlike anyone else on this team is able to, right? And he's obviously very, very fast. He reached, I think, 21.5 miles per hour today on his touchdown run. That was crazy. And when you look at his stats now, as we enter this final stretch of the season here, Bron, he's got 7 receiving touchdowns. All of those have come within the last 4 games, which is absurd. He didn't score a receiving touchdown until week 10, and he's already at 7 now. And he's at 9 total touchdowns on the season with 2 rushing touchdowns in there. And there are only 2 players in the NFL with more. There are only 2 receivers, only 2 wide receivers in the NFL with more total touchdowns than Christian Watson. Those 2 players being Devontae Adams and Stephon Diggs. So he is, in terms of, you can't really do scrimmage touchdowns with a receiver. I mean, no one really does that. But in terms of scrimmage touchdowns, he's number 3 in the NFL at the receiver position. He's got 7 receiving touchdowns on the year. He is certainly making a case for Offensive Rookie of the Year, which is not something any of us saw coming week 9. None of us thought that would ever be a reality. So that's been a great, exciting development. And Romeo, hopefully he's able to come back as soon as possible for our next game, because he was questionable coming into this game. So Romeo being back on the field is going to be important. But I think Christian has shown things that Romeo didn't show early on this season when Christian was hurt. I think Christian has been a bit better than Romeo was. But getting both of those guys on the field, it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, Griff, I think, and you talk about the difference between those two guys. I think Romeo showed what he can do as a contested catch guy, but he's not going to be able to separate the same way that Christian, who has some of the best speed in the world at this position. I don't think he's going to show you that same thing as what Christian is able to do. But Romeo has certainly shown his stuff, and he's shown that he can do this thing at an elite level when he's playing well. So when we get Christian and Romeo on the field at the same time, and Rodgers is in there working with both of those guys, that's what I want to see. That's why I want to see Rodgers play. And we'll definitely get Romeo back after the bye week here. So when it comes to preparing for the future, I almost want to see Rodgers gel and work and see how good this offense can be with those two guys on the field at the same time, with Randall Cobb and Allen Lazard in the mix, those guys that I expect to be there next year, and just see what this offense can do a little bit, and kind of evaluate from there how badly you may need another receiver, or maybe you feel comfortable maybe just getting somebody on a lower level in terms of a free agent or something like that, or do you need to go out and make a big move? Those are not that they would, of course, but those are the things I think about when evaluating the team for the present and future.
Yeah, and I get that perspective, but I don't know. I've gotten used to thinking that this team is going to end up with a top 10 pick in April. You know, I've kind of been thinking that for the last couple of weeks. So now, all of a sudden, they're 5-8, and the rest of their schedule, they've got a bye week, and then they've got a couple more winnable games. So are we going to finish this season, 7-10? Are we going to finish this season 8-9? Because then we're looking at a 16, 17 overall draft pick. Don't love that. I would much rather have a top 10 pick than have a 7-10 record.
But how would you feel if they went, 9-8?
And then missed the playoffs by 2 games?
No, they won't miss the playoffs by 2 games. They're going to be, if they go 9-8, they're either going to get in. I think it's decent shot they get in, or they will be the 8 seed.
No, they're not making the playoffs. They're just not.
Look, I like their chances. All they got to do is win 4 more games, and then a lot of stuff has to happen, and then they're in.
They've shown us nothing to make us think they can win 2 games in a row.
They just beat the Bears, man.
They did just beat the Bears. The Bears, who are 3-10 and bad, objectively bad. Oh my gosh. No, I mean, it feels good. Whatever. I'll let you be a fan how you want to be a fan. I'm not going to be a party pooper completely, but I think you're dumb, basically. Where do you want to move on to here? I mean,
I think you're ugly.
Thank you.
No.
One more thing about Christian Watson. Have you seen the video, like the compilation of Tyler Lockett this season? How he's like going out of his way not to take a hit. Like every time he gets run after the catch, he just falls over. He just like dives, like in Madden when he hit the wrong button. He just dive down because he's not getting hit. First of all, I'm so in favor of any football player doing that because getting hit, I mean, injuries matter in this sport. They really matter. And when you're built like Tyler Lockett, when you're built like Christian Watson, where people look at you and think, yeah, he's probably pretty fragile. I'm all for avoiding hits as much as possible. But people are sensitive about that topic. Definitely, a lot of Seahawks fans I see on Twitter who are like, he's losing potential yardage by not putting his shoulder down. Have you not seen
Watson
the video?
Makes up for it with that speed, though. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah. I mean, the Packers fan base feels like the type of fan base that would get upset about a player diving down every time they catch the ball like that. But moving on, where do we want to move here, Bron? Pass protection? Do we want to talk about Zach Tom's appearance at left tackle? He looked good.
Let's talk about the pass protection because he did look pretty good, and the whole group looked good against a pretty bad Bears pass rush. But still, it was nice to see Aaron not get hit when he's got broken ribs and that broken thumb. It was nice to see him stay on.
No sacks.
No sacks. Not a single one. So it was good for us to have Aaron going into the bye week now. No setbacks on the injured thumb. No setbacks on the ribs because he didn't really get put to the ground more than one time. That it wasn't a sack.
That's a good thing in your opinion.
Yes, I don't want my quarterback to be hurt. No, I don't. And I actually think that he'll be quite healthy. Maybe, and he even said that he thinks those 2 injuries will be behind him by the time this game against the Rams rolls around. So I'm quite thrilled about that, and hopefully we'll get to see a little bit of Aaron at full strength against the Rams here.
Quite thrilled? Is quite thrilled really the phrase you're using here?
What happens when it gets interesting, Griff? Because when we beat the Rams after the bye week, things are going to get a little interesting.
Well, let me take you back to a time where we lost to the Detroit Lions, the one-win Lions in Detroit in Rodgers.
I don't remember that.
You've watched that out?
I don't remember that.
Aaron's at the podium after the game saying, "Well, we've got 2 games at home, and if we win both of those, it's a whole different situation. Talk to me then." And then we beat the Cowboys. We're not dead. We're not dead. That's the great news. We're not dead. And then we've got a short week against the Tennessee Titans at home in the cold, wearing the all-white uniforms, coming off that huge overtime win against the Cowboys.
I don't
feeling
remember
good.
this.
If we win this game against the Titans, then our playoff chances are very much alive. And then we lose that one.
I don't have any recall of that.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm saying
all I know is we're going to win our next 4.
You know what? It's kind of like a coping mechanism for me because I know that I am the type of person who would buy into something like this, and I don't want to buy into this. So I'm going to assume that you are out of your mind. But what were we talking about here? So we haven't even mentioned David Bakhtiari because we were going to on the midweek show, but we didn't get to do a midweek show this week. If you were wondering, if you called in, we got a bunch of voicemails. If you called in, we didn't get to do a midweek show this week because of just scheduling conflicts, let's call it that. So no midweek show. We didn't get to go over your voicemails, but we did get them, and we do appreciate it, of course. If you want to leave a voicemail, by the way, because we do 2 shows a week here, usually. If you want to call in, the number is 920-430-0711. You call that number, you wait for it to stop ringing, you leave a voicemail, and we will potentially put you on the show and answer your question or review your opinion. If you want to give us an opinion, a question, a take, anything. Literally, just give us anything. And we also, since the last show, we have set up an email now, too, where you can do the same thing. Send in a question, take an opinion, but in written form. If you don't want your voice on the airwaves here, you can email todayintitletown@gmail.com. Very simple. Todayintitletown, no periods, no nothing. Todayintitletown@gmail.com. Email that, send us in your takes, your questions, and you call the number as well. And we will get to you on the next show. So that's, what was I talking about again? I was talking about, we didn't do the midweek show, so we didn't talk about David Bakhtiari. But guess what, Bron? Surprise appendectomy. It never ends with this guy, huh?
Oh, I see. It really is out of his control. It's not like it's a knee setback. If it was a knee setback, I'd be pretty worried. But this is a routine surgery that happens to people, children, adults of all ages. Has happened to me. I have gone through the surgery. So, and I actually I made a 3-day comeback. I was told to sit for 2 weeks. I came back in 3 days. So
wow, you're built different, man.
I am just I don't even want to get into some of those things, but I was ready to go.
As you said, if I told you that someone on this Packers roster had a surprise appendectomy out of nowhere, and they're not going to be able to suit up this week, and you had one guess of who that player was, your guess would be David Bakhtiari.
That's a good way to put it, I guess, but I'm still not blaming him for it, certainly.
Me neither, but it's just funny, honestly. It's just funny.
Poor David, sucks. Man. I mean, yeah, it sucks for him, but hopefully, I think I like a good full off season of him being healthy and then getting back because he's been playing well. So I think an off season, really well, even right, like you said. So I think to get a full off season of health and get his legs back underneath him entirely in training camp and get a really strong few months of preparation before the season starts. I feel really good about him moving forward. This is just another one of those things. And like you said, I mean, we're sitting here at 5-8. It's not like it's the biggest deal. We also won. No harm, no foul there. And he'll have the bye week, so he should be good to go for the Rams, and we'll be right back to it. Just unfortunate for him, and he said the surgery went well, so all that's changed is that he's just appendixless now.
Yeah, I hope that doesn't affect his pass blocking. if you think if the bye week was earlier on in the season, we'd be in a better spot? Because I do.
No, I don't. If Christian Watson caught that touchdown in week 1.
I was just going to say that, but you think Christian Watson dropping that 75-yarder, that would have changed everything?
Yes. I don't know. Maybe after the London game it would have made a difference, but I don't know how much. That's the only thing I could say. I doubt it, though. I still don't think I don't.
Yeah, I
the
don't
way that doesn't change anything for me really.
Well, now we're getting healthy for the playoff run.
We're not getting Gary back. We're not getting Stokes back. How much healthier can we get?
Wow. Yeah, no.
We're getting back appendixless David.
Here's a guy that we've dogged a lot on this season, A.J. Dillon.
Oh, he's been
good
really
back-to-back
two good
weeks
weeks
now.
here. 2 good weeks. Really impressive by him.
I mean,
so that was good to see.
It was good to see. 5.2 yards per carry. He finishes with 18 attempts, 93 yards. I don't know for sure, but I imagine 18 attempts is his highest of the year. Jonesy did go out of this game pretty early with a shin injury, was it? And
I guess, but he kept coming back in and out.
Yeah, it felt like a thing where he was begging to come in on the sideline probably because we saw Patrick Taylor get a carry in there. So it felt like a thing where the team was ready to keep him out of the game to, keep him healthy for the playoff run. But he was probably begging, to come back in the game. But A.J. Dillon was the bell cow today. 5.2 yards per carry, a long of 21, 1 touchdown in there. The touchdown run, good run by A.J. Dillon. I don't know where to stand. I don't know where I stand on A.J. Dillon. I mean, not much has changed. He's looked good, which is good. But, the Bears' defensive front, they traded their best player, Roquan Smith, earlier this season, and they do not have very good defense. So, I don't know. I don't know what I take from this game at all. I don't know.
Well, it's just a week to celebrate the little things, I guess, because you miss a lot about winning when you're losing. And one of those things that you miss is watching Aaron Rodgers walk off the field and look at the crowd, and with the Bears fans giving him the middle finger, he raises the I love you and salutes and waves goodbye to the Bears fans. And it's just the little things that make you feel good. And Griff, I'm not in the business of looking at draft picks in December. It's just not my thing. I'm just not going to do it. I don't know how many Packers fans are, but
I've been happy today, which I'm interested in. If we lost, because I feel like this game doesn't matter, but if we lost, would I have been sad today? Maybe. But I've been in a pretty good mood today. I think the Packers, they played a part in that. Let's switch to the defense here. I mean, God, what are we doing with this defense at this point in the season, man? They look bad. They only give up 19 points, right? This was by far not their worst statistical performance of the season. But they just look like a bad team out there. They look slow out there. They look like not everyone's on the same page. It looks like a team where the players just aren't bought into the coaching staff. And that's a hard thing to declare as a watching from the couch, right? But that's the impression I get because every week we talk about this, Bron. How many first round picks do we have to spend on this unit for them to play well? How much money do we have to spend for them to look like an elite defense? So at some point you have to point your finger at the coaching.
Yeah, Griff, it's just tough. The way that they've been schemed is a clear issue throughout this year in a lot of spots where, like you talk about from the couch, some things are hard to point out. Like, it's hard to point out the mentality of the players or what they're thinking individually. This is impossible stuff. You're just trying to gauge it. But things we can point out are philosophical ideas that Joe Barry continues to push through his scheme. And we talk about every week how he just doesn't utilize players to their strengths and tries to put them in positions that he already has planted throughout his scheme rather than trying to utilize these guys in the best way that they can succeed and then try to make it work from there. This is the main problem with Joe Barry. We need to find somebody. I don't know if there's anybody out there like this, Griff, but who is out there that's adaptable, that is willing to go the extra mile in getting to know these players on an individual level, both on and off the field, and gauge what it really is in terms of these guys' best chance to have success. Just put these guys in the best position to win. And that's what I want. Who's out there that's willing to do that? That's how I would go about it as a defensive coordinator. That's the best way to me to get the most out of what you have. And that's the goal, right? Because defensive coordinators can't go and sign whoever they want. They can certainly talk to the GM and have conversations. Just like Matt LaFleur, even he has little to no say, it seems, in personnel decisions in terms of who gets brought in and whatever, because he very much wanted Will Fuller, who he had familiarity with at Notre Dame, and just, again, he was not brought in. And a lot of decisions probably don't even get much insight from LaFleur. And we talk about the defensive coordinator who LaFleur brought in, he has much, much even less of, when we're talking about input. So I think that he has to go and make the most out of what he has instead of trying to fit these guys who maybe aren't designed to just go fit in a certain scheme like Joe Barry's. Try to use them to the best of their ability and see what we can get out of them.
This defense, I mean, there's no shortage of alphas on this defense. There's no shortage of guys that you can imagine a defensive coordinator coming in and building a scheme around. Jair Alexander being one of them. Jair had an interesting day today. I mean, he gives up a 56-yard completion to, of all people, Equanimous St. Brown. Then he gives up a 49-yard completion to, again, of all people, N'Keal Harry. Like, one of the jokes of the NFL. Like,
and it's
N'Keal
crazy
Harry.
Because Jair called EQ, his former teammate, he was with him for, 4 years? He calls EQ a scrub after the game, which blew my mind. He called him a scrub. I thought it was a fake quote.
You think maybe he doesn't know who that is?
That's insane.
I'm thinking that was
he definitely guards him in practice, Griff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was joking. I think him and EQ are probably friends. Why'd he give me that face?
I don't know. I don't think he was joking. He was like, man, I can't even believe I let that up because that dude's a scrub. That was like his exact words.
So funny, bro.
I think he was serious.
Funny. No, but then he said hats off to him. He made a great play.
Well, yeah. That's
did.
the crazy thing. He did. I mean, yeah. But then we didn't even mention, Griff, he gets the pick that turns the game around for us and gives us a chance to play some complimentary football and put points on the board after a turnover, which we did. And that was part of the reason why we scored 18 unanswered points against Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, bounce back play for him. Similar to a guy like Rasul, who did have a forced fumble in there. That's kind of the story of the season for both of those guys. It's they give up things in the passing game, but then they make you pay by these big turnovers.
And it's so interesting, too, because last year, Rasul was locking up, and he was one of the top cover corners in all of football. And Jair has been that for so long. 2020, he was an all-pro at that spot and covering guys at the elite of all elite levels. And now both of those guys have struggled at times, but they are always good for the big plays, whether it's breaking up screen passes right at the line of scrimmage, behind the line of scrimmage, getting those key interceptions.
Jair had one of those today.
Jair has one. Rasul has one every game. Jair has one every game or two, and they all make plays. And I think Keyshawn Nixon is one of those guys, too. That is just – Griff, you have a little bit of a differing opinion on him, but in terms of what he does in the return game, on special teams, the consistency – I thought he was excellent today. He was even better the week prior against the Eagles, giving us chances to win in those games by getting us field position right. But he's one of those guys that, will he give up stuff in coverage? Yes. But he's also come in and made very good plays. He stepped up when we needed him, when we had injuries and different things occurring. When he came in and played in the slot for us, he stepped up. And then since then, he's been a decent guy in terms of covering and everything like that. But also, he's very good at making big plays. He's just a playmaker, and he's a dog-type guy where when you go out there, he's one of those playmaking guys, and he's just going to give you a chance to win when he's out there. I like him as a player, both on defense and special teams, because he's going to go out there and make those dirty plays that guys don't want to make, and he got a big pick too to end the game. Not that it was a crazy pressure situation, but he did pick off Justin Fields, and that's something that you have to say. Like, guys that can make those kind of plays out there are important to what you do, and I think that's the kind of player you want when you're trying to win a Super Bowl. So I look for him to be a part of this squad next year as well.
I love Keyshawn on special teams. I love Keyshawn the tackler, but Keyshawn in pass coverage, I do not want as a starter. And
not a starter, but a depth piece. I think Key's very good.
Great
as a
depth
depth guy.
Great
really
depth
great
piece.
depth guy.
He can come in when a guy goes down for 1 week. He can come in, and you're not going to feel terrible about it. But I mean, just to clarify why you said that, I have a differing opinion because I do think that he gives up a little bit too much in coverage to be a reliable starter. But yeah, I mean, as a depth piece, great find by this front office. Great find, Keyshawn Nixon. A lot of that credit probably goes to Rich Bisaccia because they spent time together in Vegas with the Raiders. But on special teams, you remember week 3, he had that big downed punt at the 1-yard line against the Buccaneers. That was a great play. Rodgers said at the podium today that when the Packers would be returning kickoffs, he would kind of be hoping that they just take a knee, right? But now he's hoping that Keyshawn takes it out every time, which is
He
something
tells him
that
to even.
I thought it was funny all day today, because it doesn't matter where in the end zone Keyshawn was catching these kickoffs, he was taking it out. It could be 8 yards deep, it could be 3 yards deep, it could be outside the end zone. He's returning that thing. And sometimes he gets to like the 18 or 19, and I'm like, God, why would you not just kneel it? But then you get the plays where he takes it out to the 30 or the 40, or last week he had big returns. So it's interesting that we have this player now, a dynamic return man, because go back a month ago and we were begging for them to sign someone like this even. And turns out Keyshawn Nixon, he's been that guy. And yeah, I mean, this is another one of the little things, right, Bron? Like Rodgers walking off the field, this is another one of those little things. Keyshawn Nixon playing well on special teams. Great tackler, too.
And you mentioned how Rodgers spoke about him today, and he said that's one of the guys that I want to go to battle with, and he feels like he can win a championship with. And he said he wishes he had players like him earlier in his career on some of these teams, because he's just one of those guys. I do think he's one of those guys, those vocal type players, one of those guys you're going to talk about as a special teams leader, and a guy who can come in and spark a defense with some big plays. And you need playmakers, big play guys. I think we talk about some of these guys, like I think Preston Smith is a turnover creator, a big playmaker in big moments too, and he'll go and get that big sack at times. Like I think he's one of those guys. You need guys like that are going to go make a play when you need it. And I think that's how you would classify Key. I think he's one of those guys.
Yeah, well, Bron, I didn't know until just now that you were a huge Keyshawn Nixon guy, so that's good to know. I didn't know you loved Keyshawn like you do, but I mean, yeah, good player.
Well, how often do we have guys that can play on special teams? I mean, this is a
many.
rarity. So I think he certainly deserves
so.
all the love for sure.
Yeah, one last thing on this defense before we get out of here, Bron. So Jair gets the big pick, right? And the whole defense, they run to the end zone and they do the namaste celebration. Awesome, great picture. And it got me thinking in the moment, going back these past few years, you've got the D-Train celebrations led by Preston Smith and led by Zadarius Smith, and the whole defense, it felt like they were just one big family. I feel like we're not really getting that this season. I feel like we haven't seen many group celebrations. Granted, there hasn't been much to celebrate defensively this season, but I mean, they've celebrated, in poor performances in years past, and it feels like, I don't know, I see a lot of pointing. I see a lot of blown coverages where you check the all 22 and there's just guys pointing at each other like hands up, like what are you doing? So I don't know. This is another thing where it's hard to judge from your couch, but it feels like a coaching thing.
Right, so how do you fix that, Griff? That's a good point. Like you said, though, there really isn't much to celebrate, but there is maybe you're right. Is it a lack of trust? Not in the guys, but in the system. And then you're not as all in. Like when you're playing out there, you just don't have as much faith that you can get it done. And it's just some of those things fall into play for sure. But how do you fix it? Is it when we look at later this year, is it firing Joe Barry? Because all indicators so far from Matt LaFleur, I don't know if he'd say anything otherwise, obviously, but it doesn't seem like there's a definite firing in play.
Yeah, firing Joe Barry is not a foregone conclusion.
No, certainly not, right? And that's part of it, right? Do you think that solves everything? Do you put in, what would it be, a new scheme, right? And then these guys have to learn not the defense is pretty similar through and through, but when it's a new scheme, a new identity, if you will, is that something that you want to put these players through again, especially when you're going from Pettin to Joe Barry now to another guy? Like, that's certainly part of it, too. Those are all factors, but what is it really? How do you fix it? That's the main question. They have to figure that out. And that'll be something they figure out over these last few weeks, see how they play. Today was a weird one because there were bad moments, and then there were some good moments too, like those turnovers. You go +3 in the turnover margin, and that's something you get excited about, but can they do that consistently? Because they haven't all year. So these are the things they'll look at.
I feel like after this season, if Joe Barry gets fired, we're going to get some anonymous sourcing reports. Like, do you remember when... in 2019, I think it was, first year with Matt, second year with Mike Pettin, I guess. But it was after we signed the Smith brothers and Amos. There was a report that in the middle of that season that came out that, the defense that season was so connected. It was a big family. They were playing ping pong together. They put a ping pong table up in the locker room or whatever, in the meeting room. And there was a report that the year prior they had like a Christmas party where only like 5 people came or something like that. I don't know if you remember this report, but I do. And I think we're going to get something similar to that next season. Eventually, whenever this defense fixes itself and they get back to playing like themselves and the leaders can lead properly again, I think we're going to get some reports about, like, they didn't trust Joe Barry's play calling. It was too complicated, something like that. Because everything just feels too fishy to me. It feels like there's something in the waters with this defense. It feels like there's something that we just don't know about at this point. And it's interesting that none of these guys have gone to bat for Joe Barry. That's another thing that I've kind of been monitoring this season. None of these guys are really defending Joe. So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting though if they move on from Joe Barry, if at all, if they do that, because it's not a guarantee.
Yeah, Griff, is this team lacking a leader on defense, or if they have one, I don't know who it is, because is it Devondre? He's only been there for a year, and this is his second year here, and he's been out at times this year, so it's been tougher. But who's their leader? Is it Jair? Is it Devondre? Is it Kenny Clark? Is it Preston? It probably, I would say, foregone conclusion was Za'Darius when he was
Definitely
here.
Z.
And then that fell out of favor when he got hurt and things were complicated last year. Now he's not here. Who's the leader? It's not apparent. I don't think it's clear. And that's an issue. On a good defense, you know who the leader is, right? And that's a lot of the times that's just the way it is. When you look at the 49ers, like, you can point to a few guys who could certainly and play well enough to be considered a leader of that group. You talk about the Fred Warner or the Nick Bosa. Like, those guys are leadership guys. And these great defenses have guys like that. Even Dallas, who's playing really well this year, Micah Parsons is that guy for them. And it's just, who's our leader? Do we have a guy? Is it Rashawn Gary? But he's hurt. Like, these are the things that we have to figure out. And we don't know for a fact who's vocal enough, because you have to pick your spots as a leader to when to be vocal and when to just lead by example. Because not everybody's going to respond when you're not the clear and far and away leader on a football team. You can't just lead by example at all times, because you don't know that all these younger guys are going to be watching you, because why would they if they don't know that you're the leader? If that makes sense. Like, when Aaron talks about leading by example, he's the leader, everybody knows it, so everybody's already watching him. He doesn't always need to speak, because he knows every single player in that locker room is watching the littlest things that he does to try to pick up on what it means to be great. Who's going to be that for Green Bay? Because it was Clay, it was Charles Woodson. These are guys that Green Bay doesn't have anymore. So who are these guys that you're going to be looking to, championship football players on defense? Who's the leader? That's, I think, a big question that everybody, whether it's the front office, the coaching staff, and the players themselves, that needs to be answered. And I think that's a really important part of how we're going to be a championship football team next year.
That was really great stuff. I agree with that. Yeah, I don't know. The leaders on this defense, you think maybe Amos, but he is a free agent this season.
Also hasn't played well enough to back up that kind of talk or to be a leader. You have to be an elite player. You have to play like it on a weekly basis. Even we talk about Aaron Rodgers as the leader, right? Even his worst football this year has been very good. Like, he's still a great quarterback on his worst day.
Devontae was that guy too. Thinking about Devontae
does it, and yeah,
everyone looked up to Devontae.
He relates to these younger guys a little bit better too, and that's part of it. You lose a leader like Devontae, you're going to lose some stuff on offense, just the way it is. You're going to lose some of that, and the swagger that you have as an offense. He carried so much of that, and when he leaves, he's going to take some of it for sure. Who's the swagger now? And it's just not there, right? We're missing that swagger.
You remember Devontae's touchdown celebration?
Yes, I saw it today. Sadly,
he did it today. I was just going to ask, is he doing that today?
Vegas? Yes.
Did you cry?
It was
Did you
very upsetting. What was your
you
point there? Did you have a point, or are you just bringing that up?
I was just bringing it up.
Okay.
You talking about his swagger reminded me of it.
So it's the same thing for the defense. Like, who is that guy that is as good as you know he's going to be, elite even on his bad days? That's the stuff we need to figure out, Griff, and it's certainly a major question heading into this offseason, maybe the biggest in terms of the defensive side of the ball. And I don't know if that's been talked about much. It certainly hasn't been in terms of what I've seen, but I think that's something we all, fans and the team alike, need to consider as we try to piece together a championship squad going into next year, because this certainly was not one as we approach the final weeks. That's something we need to look at to try to change the culture a little bit to what we know it can be. And I'm not talking about massively overhauling anything, but certainly a tip to what we've been doing in the past years with guys like Za'Darius and Clay and Charles Woodson in mind, trying to figure out how we can alter the current status of this group.
Right, yeah. That's definitely going to be something they talk about this offseason. I think we're going to end it with that, so thank you so much for listening. Just if I could plug one thing and one thing only, I would plug the voicemail. Please leave us a voicemail. We love the voicemails. 920-430-0711. Call that number, leave a voicemail, and on our next show, we will be going through all of your voicemails, including we're going to be looking through the voicemails that you guys left that we didn't get to last week. We'll be looking through those, but we'll also be looking through the new ones. You can email us at todayintitletown@gmail.com. Send us an email. It can be a little bit of a longer form question there if you'd like. Those are always great as well. And like I said, along with voicemails, we will be getting to those on our next episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you've listened this far, it really means a lot. Please rate us 5 stars on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you are listening. Send us feedback on Instagram. You can DM us at todayintitletown on Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram at alldaypackers, Bron on Instagram at lambo.leapers, and that is everything. So Packers win 5-8. Gearing up for the playoff run, right, Bron? Oh, God, help me. 5-8. Go, Pack, go.
Thank you for listening, everybody. Let's get ready. We just won a big football game, and we've got a bye week, which we will still be bringing podcasts to you. But for now, forever, and as always, go, Pack, go.